Today we have the lovely Luke Andrews. Luke, something that I appreciate about you and the time that I have been able to spend with you. What I love is not only do you come with a lot of accolades to building $1 billion team leader, realtor, husband, father, all around amazing human being. You also have this sense of humor that just cracks me up. And so, with all of those factors combined, it puts you at the top of my list of people that I just really just appreciate and respect. So, I don't want to get too.
Thank you. I don't want you to oversell me here though, because I don't, but I absolutely appreciate it.
David and I are really excited that Luke took time out of his really busy schedule to join us today. And so, we're going to go ahead and hand it over to you.
First and foremost, I just want to say thank you so much for allowing me to be here today and for you all to putting together this community and this family and this tribe that you have here. This is just such an amazing space. So I am insanely grateful that you all put this together and are allowing me to be a part of it. So thank you. That said, I tell you, I'm going to kind of change things up a little bit today over what I had thought that I was going to do. And Heather and David, I know we hadn't really talked about this yet, so I hope this is okay. And I know a lot of you are here to talk about the billion-dollar team that I built, and I'm absolutely going to go through that. But I'm scrolling through social media over the last few days, and I mean, really, this kind of goes back months, years, and everything else. But you just start seeing on Instagram, on TikTok, on any of this stuff that everybody is just living this highlight reel, that everyone is so focused on the things that they do well that it seems like there's just like these overnight successes all over the place. It's like, oh, well, I got into real estate yesterday and I already have 14 houses under contract, and I wrote my first book and it's already a bestseller, or I bought my first lottery ticket and now I'm a millionaire 2 days later. Nobody's talking about the struggles that we're going through. And so it makes people who are actually living in the middle of that, it makes them feel less than. And so I want to get to a spot where we're actually able to celebrate some of those failures, to normalize some of those failures, and absolutely talking about them and learning from each other. Because I think if you can learn from my failures and I can learn from yours, it doesn't mean that we're not going to make mistakes, but it means that we can each go out and shorten and flatten our own learning curves that are out there. Um, you know, I've noticed nobody's talking about, that time in high school that they had the ball in their hands and the clock's ticking down and they're down by one and they missed the shot. Everybody wants to tell you about the shot that they made, but nobody wants to talk about the one that they missed. But by bypassing those misses, bypassing those failures, bypassing those losses, we're also bypassing those lessons that we learn, again, that we're going to shorten and flatten that learning curve. So I want to take today, and as we're talking about the teams that have been built, my transition within careers, I also want to talk about a few of the failures along the way. We'll talk about a couple of the successes, but I really want to hit on a few of those failures. And I want to start with this one that I call the Jay-Z and Eminem story. For those who have heard me speak in the past, you've probably heard this, but there's so many valuable lessons inside of it. And a couple of years ago, I was really getting into public speaking, and it was something that just terrified me so much. And so I knew I had to do more of it. And so I'm asking around, and it's like, hey, anybody know of anywhere where I can go speak? And a colleague of mine said, I used to be a teacher. There's all kinds of high schools in town that are always looking for business leaders within the community to come and speak. And I thought, what a phenomenal opportunity. And especially some of these high schools where socioeconomics are a little bit lower, and the paths aren't always clear of where these kids are going to go. And that was super important to me because I was one of those kids. I was one of the ones that grew up extremely poor. But I had great mentors in my life. I had great adults in my life. I had great examples that were out there. And I wanted to be that for these kids. And I wanted to show them that it doesn't really matter where you start, that you can get anywhere that you want to go. But so I got my first one scheduled, and I'm just up, just racking my brain about how am I going to connect with these kids? Because everything I knew about public speaking, you've got to connect with your audience. You've got to connect with your audience. And so immediately what comes to mind is hip hop, rap music. And I was like, all right, kids love rap music. I love rap music. This is going to be easy. I'm going to get this taken care of. Um, and so I started thinking about who are some popular rappers, who are some of the greats, the goats, and immediately Jay-Z and Eminem came to mind. And there's this quote that I have here, and this is what I was going to lead off with, because I think this quote is so fantastic, by Jay-Z, and it's, everybody looks at you strange and say you've changed, like you work this hard just to stay the same. Now, I mean, I get chills when I hear that. It is just, it's such a phenomenal representation of what we want to do to grow and constantly get better. Um, and so I'm kind of turned around looking at the screen. I know, like, you're not supposed to do when you're speaking, but I'm looking at the screen and reading this and expecting to turn around and just jaws on the floor and just everybody just on the edge of their seat, just excited. And I get it. I've got all of these just kind of strange looks, and these kids like, what? And so I asked the question that I probably shouldn't have asked. I said, is Jay-Z not cool anymore? And I start getting laughs and snickers. I get a couple of no, bros, he's not. And then from the back of the room, I heard the worst possible response that I could have gotten. And that this kid looked up and he said, who? First of all, that broke my heart. But in that very moment was the first time in all this preparation that I had that I realized that for the next hour, I had an entire speech that was revolved around an Eminem song that I'm just now realizing came out before all of these kids were even born. And so I'm just like, I'm mortified. I am terrified. And I fought my way through that. And surprisingly, I wanted to get back up and do it again. Um, but again, I told you that I wanted to talk about some of the failures that I've had to make this easier. I wasn't as prepared as I needed to be that day. I thought I was prepared, but I wasn't. Hopefully, I'm a little more prepared for you all today. Um, but I want to talk a little bit about this $1 billion team. And I want to tell you that this $1 billion team that I built was actually not in the real estate world. This was actually in the corporate world. This was in a previous life that I had. So I worked for a Fortune 100 company, and it was a health and wellness company. And I had been in different sections of the organization, and I had primarily been on the sales side, the B2C, and all of a sudden I'm looking for new opportunities to take on some additional leadership roles. The company is looking for ways that they can promote me. And this opportunity comes up that is going to allow me to move across the country, which I actually really wanted to do because it put me significantly closer to family. But I was going to move across the country, and I was going to take over a team in the marketing department. I was officially in strategic data and analytics. And so I move into this marketing department role, and I get in there and I start talking to people within that section of the organization. And they're asking me about my background. They're asking me about what I do, what I know. And they start to realize that I have no experience in marketing, none. I mean, they're asking me questions like, oh, so you're kind of leading this small little piece of the marketing side. Are you creative? No. Are you artistic? No. Well, surely you're good at coming up with taglines, writing copy, any of those. And I'm like, no, I'm really not. And then all of a sudden, you start getting these whispers of, you don't belong here. You don't belong here. What are you doing here? You're taking this job from someone who's actually earned it, from someone who's actually deserves to be here. And I've got people from all over this organization telling me, you're not supposed to be here. And I get to a point where I tell them, I'm like, well, somebody hired me. Somebody thought that I should be here. And that's when I realized I started digging in a little bit deeper and realized that my boss, my leader, didn't want me there, never wanted to hire me. In fact, I found out later he actually hated me, did not want me to be there. But his leader and then their leader on top of that saw something in me that brought me along and brought me there. But they're states removed from where I am. They're so far outside of it that I'm just stuck in this little world of people telling me, you shouldn't be here. You have no right to be in this position. And so you start hearing all of these haters that are out there. And then you start to realize, do you know who the biggest hater out of every single one of those people were? Every single one of them, the absolute biggest, the one whose voice was the loudest, was myself. I had this imposter syndrome that I didn't belong there. I listened to the outside crowd that said, you don't belong here. This was a job that I was super excited about in the beginning, but very, very quickly, when others started to turn on me, I turned on myself. I did the thing that you're not supposed to do. And I got caught in this imposter syndrome. And I know that there are several of you out there who have been in that same boat. But at that point, I was there. I had moved my family across the country. I didn't know where else to go. This was the job that I had. This is how I was supporting my kids. This is how I was supporting my wife. This is how I was putting food on the table. So I had to find a way to make it work. So I said, okay, I know I'm not good at the big stuff, but there's got to be one thing that I'm good at. Let's just break it down. Let's make it simple. What is one thing that you're good at? And what I realized that in all of my roles that I've ever had, and in this role currently, what I was good at was getting the most out of my team, was making them believe in themselves, was helping move them along. So taking C players and turning them into Bs, taking the B pluses and turning them into A minuses, taking the A minuses and turning them into A pluses. But I had to get down to that one point of what is one thing that I'm good at. And utilizing that, I started building up a little bit of momentum. And so I moved to this spot. I decided I was just going to start observing people around the organization. I was going to start observing, and I started learning things about other great leaders within my direct area. And what I realized is it had nothing to do with their skills for the actual role that they were in. And once I learned what their keys to success were, I started looking back and realizing that a lot of the great leaders in my life had these same two keys to success. And so two things that I've always taken with me, are realizing that the two keys in any role, it doesn't matter the industry, are number one, you can't be afraid to tackle problems, to solve problems. So having a willingness to solve problems. And number two, being an effective communicator. So by taking those two things, I realized that I can now take this role that I don't have to be an expert in what I'm doing. If I can empower my team and I can get them to the next level, the people that actually they're in the trenches, they know exactly what they're doing. And I'm willing to tackle those large problems and I'm willing to effectively communicate that there's no limit to where I can go. So I said, okay, what are my two main skills? What are the two things that I can do right now? Number one, I knew I wasn't afraid to tackle those large challenges. And number two, I could tell a great story with the numbers. And so I realized that all of these different little marketing pieces were all siloed. And I decided that I was going to put together a story to go take to leadership, telling the story with numbers, tackling these challenges. And I somehow talked my way into an even larger role to where I was over the entire marketing division. So all growth marketing was under my purview. And so what I did is now I've got a CEO of a Fortune 100 company who is reaching out to me directly and saying, hey, your little team, and my team was small. I had a team of 5 people coming to us and saying, hey, look, I need you to bring us in $1 billion in revenue in the upcoming year. $1 billion is what he's asking my team to do. And we need that to run at a 10% profit margin. So I need $100 million in profit. So I'm looking at a company, this Fortune 100 with 50 billion in annual revenue across the company. $1 billion of it doesn't seem like that much, but in an organization of 30,000 people, we're asking 5 people to come up with 2% of the annual revenue. So I've got $1 billion in revenue, 100 million in profit. And oh, by the way, your budget is only $10 million. They're asking me to spend this $10 million budget. They want me to go 100x in revenue, 10x in profit. But we went out, and by doing the things that I was good at, there were absolutely bumps along the way, but by doing the things that I was good at, we were able to not only meet, but exceed those expectations from the CEO perspective. But as most things do, my time eventually ran out at that company, in that career. I was no longer fulfilled. And I imagine a lot of you on this call today, you were probably in that boat. At some point, you're in this corporate role. You're in this role where there's very little autonomy, and you start looking at what else is out there. So I started making plans. I knew real estate was exciting to me. My wife was already in real estate, and I had gotten my license just to be able to help her out in the evenings. But the second that I started doing that, I started thinking, how can I get more of this in my life? And not being fulfilled, having something else that got me excited, I immediately started putting together a transition plan. So I put together this transition plan, left my job, went out and started a business. But as most of you know, and most of you probably realize, that most brand new agents are going to fail within the first 2 years. Most brand new businesses are going to fail within the first 2 years. So I knew I needed a 24-month transition plan, but that doesn't mean that it was easy. And again, if you're on this call, you're probably in some version of running your own business, or you're strongly considering moving in that direction. And if you think back to the time when you were first getting started, the first 6 months, super easy. Like everything is great. Even when you're getting kicked in the teeth, I mean, you're smiling, you're out there, you're living it, you're doing it. You are an entrepreneur at this point. So even the failures feel fantastic. Now, months 7 through 12 get a little bit harder. And months 13 through 24 are just damn hard. I mean, they are really, really hard. And those are the times when you want to quit. Those are the times that you want to give up. Most of these businesses aren't failing in the first year. They're failing in that 13 to 24 month window. Again, the first year is pretty easy. It's that second year that gets really, really hard. Well, let's fast forward to months 20 and 21. This is an area of my life I call broken in a beach house. About month 20, things were getting really, really tough. They were getting really tight from a cash flow perspective. Cash was running out. I mean, both my wife and I were self-employed. She was starting to step back a little bit from the business, allowing me to kind of take that step forward like I wanted to do. The cash flow was getting really tight. Credit was starting to dry up. You've got several weeks until your next closing. And even then, you've got to use those commission dollars to catch back up on bills that you had before. But nobody really knows, because I kept that all inside, because I didn't want to share those failures with everybody else on the outside world. And I didn't want to share those failures with friends and family because, one, I was embarrassed. I didn't want them to see me fail. But two, I also didn't want them to think that I wasn't good at what I was doing in case they had a referral that they could send me. I wanted them to feel confident in doing that. And it got really easy to hide and to hold that on the inside, so much so that my immediate family didn't even know. My wife, I mean, she knew things were slower. She knew things were tighter, but she had no idea the predicament that we were in, the turmoil that I was going through on a daily basis, just trying to keep us afloat. And so we've got some close friends over at our house, and this is about month 20 in the process. And everybody starts talking about fall break. All of our kids go to school together, and it's like, hey, we've got a week coming up in fall break. We should all go to the beach, get one last blowout in before the weather cools off. Of course, everyone thinks this is a fantastic idea. On the outside, I'm saying, yeah, we should consider doing that. But on the inside, I am terrified. But of course, everyone decides it's a great idea. This is what we need to do. So we start looking at places online, and everyone decides we found one that we need to book. Now, I actually immediately piped up and said, "Oh, I'll book it. I'll put it on my credit card and everybody can just Venmo me." And we did that very strategically. One, I wanted people to think that everything was okay. But two, it was actually very strategic on the backside because I had a little bit of credit left. I knew I could put this vacation on there, and everyone else would be Venmoing me cash that I could use for short-term expenses. Now, it didn't necessarily solve my long-term challenges, but it solved some short-term challenges. So that's month 20. Fast forward to month 21 when we're actually on this trip. The cash has really run out. Credit has really dried up, and I don't know what to do. At this point, I still haven't shared my suffering and my struggles. I still haven't shared that with anybody. And everybody was going to go out for dinner. And I just told them, I was like, guys, I don't feel well. I'm going to hang back. You all go out for dinner because I just needed a little bit of time to myself. And somehow we had the top floor of this beach house, which is where my wife and I, the room we were staying in, we had the entire top floor. And I go up and I'm just looking out these big picture windows, staring out at the ocean. And I just fell down on my knees and I just broke down crying. And I mean, not just like, he's a few tears are coming out. I'm sobbing uncontrollably. I don't know what to do. I have no idea where I'm going. I have no idea what I'm doing. I have no idea how to get out of this predicament that I'm in. And after crying and praying and just looking for answers, this light bulb finally goes off. And I remember this mentor that I had. Um, this this man, I had gotten to know him in kind of a roundabout way through an introduction. We had more of just like a communicating online relationship. Randomly, we had met in person once or twice up to this point. But I remember some of the lessons that he always taught. And I remember a time he talked about a time that he was in a similar predicament, broken, no cash, had a business, had payroll to meet, and had no idea what to do. And I knew if anybody could help me, he could. And so I decided I was going to reach out. And he had always talked about you need a mentor, you need a coach. In any situation that you're in, you need that coach. And I knew he needed to be my coach, but I couldn't afford him. I couldn't even afford the online courses that he had. At the time, he had this suite of online courses that ran probably $5,000 for the entire package. You know, he was probably charging $1,500 to $2,000, if not more, a month for individual coaching services. And I knew I needed him, but I knew I couldn't afford him. But I just reached out on the off chance and I said, hey, I need help. I laid out my entire predicament, which first and foremost, it felt so good to lay that out and to finally say it live and in person. But I laid it out and I said, look, I said, I know I need a coach and I know I can't afford you, but I need someone like you. Do you know of a coach maybe who's up and coming in the industry, brand new, who's willing to take me on very inexpensively? And, you know, I'll find another credit card. I'll find something. I can pay him $250, $300 a month, but I just need a coach to get through this season of my life. And he took a breath and he said, let's get you through this. He said, first and foremost, you need to go through some of my courses. He said, there are 2 or 3 specifically that you need to start with that are going to help just at least jumpstart you into the next session. And I said, yeah, that's great, but I can't afford it. And he said, don't worry about that. He said, here's what I need you to do. He said, here's a code, go through. Everything in my library is 100% free. He said, start with that. He said, go through course A, course B, and course C. Start with those plans. And when you have questions, reach out to me. He said, just reach out when you have questions and we're going to get you through. And he said, the next thing I need you to do, get outside, go take a walk. He said, you just need to clear your head. You need some fresh air. Get outside, go take a walk, and things will start getting clear. And I said, I don't have time for a walk. I need to start diving into these courses. I have to make a plan now. He said, take a breath, go outside and take a walk. Now we'll talk about that walk again here in a minute. But I want to talk about that mentor for just a second. I'm not saying this for any other reason than I think a lot of you all are at the Real Brokerage right now. And I just want you to know who your leader is, what kind of genuine person he is. That person that I reach out to was Sharon, and someone who has always been so caring, so generous when he didn't have to be sharing his knowledge, sharing his wealth. He had so many things going on, but he took the time to help me out. And I will be forever grateful for that. And those of you all who aren't familiar with Sharon, he's the president of the Real Brokerage, founder of the 5 a.m. Club, which is actually how he and I got to know each other. I think I was member 177 on that call. 5amclub.net. Connect with him on Instagram, any of that. It's not a direct plug, but I just want you all to know the type of mentor, the type of leader that you're working with right now. Someone who is willing to take the time, the caring. And that's what I wanted to be for those kids that we talked about in the beginning. Someone like that, because I have learned from one of the best. But back to that walk that he told me to take. He said, get outside and take a walk. And so I got out on the beach. And for those of you, most of you probably don't know, the beach is my happy place. That is where I like to go. I live nowhere near a beach. I am in Podunk, Kentucky, but I love the beach. Everything about it, from the smell of the air to feeling the sand in my toes, the water brushing up against my feet as I'm walking out there. I could sit and stare at that ocean for hours and hours and hours. And it really did. It helped. It helped clear my head. But as I'm walking back, I find this house. And there's just something about this house that I'm just drawn to. And this is an actual picture on the screen of the house that you saw. I sat back and I took a picture. And I was relatively new in real estate that time. So, I mean, for those of you in real estate, you're walking around, especially when you're in different areas and you're looking at houses wondering, oh, well, I know what that would cost in my market. I wonder what it's going to cost here. I know it's going to be more expensive here, but I'm thinking in my market, and again, this is 6 years ago. This is the middle of nowhere, Kentucky, but a house like that's going to be $1 million, maybe $2 million. And so I'm walking by because it's under construction, close to being finished, and I see the GC out there. And so I just start talking to him, just telling him how much I love the house. And he's like, oh, well, hey, let's take a look around a little bit. And so I said, if you don't mind me asking, how much is this house? And he said, this one's going to end up being between 11 and $12 million. I mean, which I was floored. I mean, again, you put this in my market, this is $1 to $2 million, and floor plan's the same. The size is the same. Materials, roughly the same cost. Cost of labor may be slightly different, but it's going to be similar. I mean, what's the real difference? Why is it so much more expensive? And if you've been in real estate and in any length of time, or anybody, I'm sure you've heard the phrase location, location, location. It's obvious why this is so much more expensive. It's sitting on the beach. It's not the house itself. It's the dirt that it's sitting on, or in this case, the sand that it's sitting on. And so you see this massive difference just from place to place. Now we'll come back to that here in just a minute. But what that really made me think of is that I was in a spot where I needed to just get back to my roots. And I needed to get back and just start pouring into people. At that time, I was pretty much on my own from a real estate perspective with no real team. I had a mentor and a leader, a phenomenal broker, but I wasn't really doing anything from a team perspective. And I realized that's what I was missing in my life. I couldn't really afford to have a team at this point, but I knew I needed to start pouring into people. And so that's when I started building that up. I said, I don't really know how I'm going to do it yet. I just need to help people. I was in a spot, I was like, I'm a firm believer. You need blessings in your life, go out and bless somebody else. It's going to come back around. You can call it karma, religion, good vibes, juju, whatever you want. But I knew that I just needed to go out and start pouring into people. And that's what I did. And my team started growing. And all of a sudden, I had 4 agents, and then I had 8, and then I had 12. Now I've got 23 agents that are there who I'm working with on a daily basis. And I won't say that in these 6 years that I've never looked back, that I've never faltered, that I've never fallen, that I've never had any backslides. But what I will say is that I've been on this hockey stick trajectory, moving up the ladder, all because of these lessons that I learned throughout this process. Now I want to talk about these lessons. Number 1, think back to when I was telling you that I was sitting in that beach house, that I was sitting there by myself and I was just crying and the light bulb went out. Now, one of the things that Sharon had always said that had always stuck with me, even the advice that I never took up until that day, he always said, don't suffer in silence. Please make sure that if you're going through something right now, you need to find somebody to talk to. You need someone that you can walk through your situation with, someone that can provide an outside perspective. And if nothing else, even if they can't, just let them be a sounding board. You need to get that off your chest. You can't let it eat away inside of you. Number 2, if you think about where I was going back to that space of when I was in the corporate world and thinking, what is the one thing that I'm good at? What is that one thing that I'm good at? I needed that singularity of focus. I think we're probably all guilty of trying to take on too many projects and tasks all at once. It's like, oh, well, if I need my business to grow, I need to do A, B, and C. And okay, well, I can manage A, B, and C. But then I get in and I'm like, oh, well, I can just kind of take this offshoot and this and that. And before you know it, you are completely overwhelmed again when we need to get back to the basics. So finding that singularity of focus that's out there. Number 3, that beach house that we were talking about. We talked about that the cost of the materials, the labor, everything was going to be pretty similar from market to market. The real difference was the location. You need to think about in your business, in your life, what is the $10 million difference? What is the one thing that sets you apart from everybody else? What's that one thing that you can go out there and do that says, this is my beach, this is my location, this is what is going to propel me to that next level. This is what I do better than everybody else. This is my $10 million difference. Now we get back to lessons from Eminem. So go back to that story that I told you at the beginning with the Jay-Z and the Eminem story. I told you that my entire speech was based around this song from Eminem that came out before these kids were born. The song is Lose Yourself. It's the title track to the movie 8 Mile. You all have probably heard it. The very beginning of that song, there is a spoken paragraph that has 2 phenomenal lessons that I have taken with me for the last several years and I use on a daily basis. If you've heard the song, it just kind of starts with that little piano overture, then it goes into the guitar, and then Eminem gets on there and he says one paragraph. He says, if you had one shot, one opportunity to seize everything you ever wanted, one moment, would you capture it or let it slip? Now, I think there is one major truth and one major fallacy in that paragraph, and they are both phenomenal lessons. The major truth is we need to be ready when opportunities strike. We need to be ready when opportunities pop up. We need to have our eyes open, our mind open, and be ready to pounce when they come up. It's one of those that if we're not looking for opportunities, we're going to miss them. We're going to miss them. So that's the truth. The fallacy in that is that there is only one opportunity. That's not the case. There are opportunities every single day. You don't just have one opportunity. Yes, we need to be ready to strike when they're there, but if you miss it, forget about it. Move on, learn a lesson, look for the next one. They are all around us. Scientists call it the Bader-Meinhof principle. You would probably know this phenomenon as, think about going out and buying a new car. You go out and you buy, I just bought a new truck recently, and it's this kind of burgundy Dodge Ram that I hadn't seen anyone with this color truck. And I was like, this is going to be fantastic. Nobody else has this truck. The second I pulled that off the lot, I pull up to a stoplight. I see one over there. I see one over there. I see one in a parking lot across the street. Now, did everybody just go out and buy this truck because I bought it? I'd like to think so. I'd like to think I have that much influence and power. I don't. I had just never noticed it before because my eyes and my mind weren't open to it. Now that I'm looking for those opportunities, they are all around. They are all over the place. So keep your mind open, your eyes open, and be ready to go. Finally, you may or may not know Matthew Del Negro. I had a chance to get to know him at a conference a couple years ago, have lunch with him. He's an actor, played a lot of character parts. He did an arc in The Sopranos. He's currently on a co-star on City on a Hill on Showtime with Kevin Bacon. But what I love about Matty D is his whole thing is around 10,000 no's. As an actor, he was like, you got to take 10,000 no's before you get to that yes. So you have to be able to fight through that rejection. So he's got a best-selling book and a podcast, both called 10,000 No's. Well, on his podcast, there is an episode that he did with Kevin Bacon, the great Kevin Bacon. If you get a chance to listen to it, it is phenomenal. But he's talking to Kevin Bacon, and he was like, you've been doing this for 4 decades. Footloose came out in 81 or 82. You've been making hits after hit after hit, currently on a hit series on Showtime. You've been doing this. And Matthew asked him, he said, what's the secret to longevity? And Kevin Bacon's answer was phenomenal. He said, there is no secret to longevity. Longevity is the secret. And what he meant by that was, sometimes things are going to be up, sometimes they're going to be down. Sometimes it's going to be easy, sometimes it's going to be hard. But what you have to do is you have to hang on. You have to fight through. If it's what you believe and know in your heart that you are supposed to be doing, you've got to fight through that adversity. You have to be learning lessons along the way, because there is no secret to longevity. Longevity is the secret. So to recap, if you're going through that anxiety right now, please, please, please do not suffer in silence. Find somebody, reach out to me. I'll have my contact info on the next screen. Reach out to me with anything that you've got. I am happy to walk you through, because I can promise you just about anything that you're going through, I have been there. I have found a way to get through it, not always the easy way, but 9 times out of 10, the way that I've gotten through it, and obviously the fastest way to get through it, is because I've reached out to people who have done it before. You need that singularity of focus. Sharon always says, you want to do great things, you got to do fewer things. Find the things that you're good at, which takes you to that $10 million difference. What is that difference in your life? What are you uber good at that you can lean heavily into? Then you got to be ready for opportunities as they come up, and realize that if you miss one, it's okay. There's another one around the corner. And finally, there is no secret to longevity. Longevity is the secret. So again, I can't thank you enough for allowing me to be out here to share my story, hopefully make things a little bit simpler for you, or if nothing else, help you realize that if you're going through something right now, that you're not alone. You're not the only one that's ever gone through this. You can find me on Instagram. I'm not super active there, but you can find me on LinkedIn. my Voxer's up there. Shoot me a voice message. If you've got something that you need and you're going through something, shoot me a voice message. I will get back to you very quickly. I'm happy to help with anything that I can. Just shoot me an email, luke@lukeandrews.us. Pop on there. I am always on there checking. I am happy to help with anything that I can because I truly believe in pouring back into others because I've had so many great people pouring into me. Uh, Heather, David, thank you all so much. Like I said, not only for allowing me to be here, but for building this community for people to just have a platform to come out and share what's on their heart. So I know this wasn't exactly what we were talking about today, but it is just something that has been deep inside and I didn't want to suffer in silence anymore. And I felt compelled. I felt it on my heart to come and share this message today. So thank you all so much. Any questions that anybody's got, I'll try to answer as best I can.